Hello there. I'm glad we found this quiet together. Outside the window of thought, the night drifts in a soft silver, and the Milky Way looks like a slow river turning through dark hills. Somewhere along its bend, our little world keeps its lamp, and we keep our questions. Tonight's is a tender one. How small are we inside that river, and how can smallness still feel whole? We'll move by candlelight, not floodlight, letting distance speak in years of light, and letting time feel old enough to carry our names. The galaxy gathers dust into stars, stars into stories, stories into a moment like this. It can be overwhelming, the span, the ages, the hush, and yet there's comfort in knowing we belong to the very fabric we wonder about. We are its brief awareness, listening back. If this gentle wandering feels right, a quiet like, and a soft subscribe, help others find this calm only when it rings true. The stars are patient, so are we. When you're ready, we'll begin together unhurried and warm. Out past the roofs and streetlights, a soft band of silver threads the dark. It looks small enough to fit between two fingers, like a smudge you might wipe from a window. That quiet band is our edge-on view of home, the Milky Way. And the question that follows, how small are we inside it, arrives almost like a lullaby. It can press at the chest and loosen it in the same breath. Ah, does that. So does belonging. The thought seems enormous, yet it feels close, as if the night had leaned in to speak just to you. From where we sit, the galaxy appears gentle, a pale river folding over the horizon. Long before names like spiral arm or star cluster, people simply saw a path. Some called it milk poured across the sky. Some called it the road of souls. They did not know they were reading a crowded script written in starlight, each grain a sun, each sun likely surrounded by its own small family. Even now, when we speak of it, we're tempted to treat it as scenery. It isn't. It is the room we are in. Scale is the first slip in the mind. Roads, trees, rooms, even mountains fit neatly inside our reach. We can walk their edges, weigh them by steps, lay a hand on bark and say, here is size. The universe does not cooperate with that kind of knowing. Between one ordinary star and the next, there is a stretch so wide that numbers become fog. Our closest stellar neighbor, Proxima Centauri, sits a little more than 4 light-years away, about 40 trillion kilometers in amount, that rolls off the tongue and lands nowhere we can stand. Imagine the sun as a small marble set gently on a table. The nearest marble would lie thousands of kilometers away, between them only dark. And yet there are hundreds of billions of such distances stitched together into one slow-turning disk. Somewhere in that disk, tucked into a modest spiral arm, a yellow star warms a small set of worlds. The star is not special. We call it the sun because we belong to it, but it is one among roughly 400 billion stars here. Around many of them swing rocky planets, icy fragments, swollen giants of gas, arrangements familiar, and arrangements we have not yet learned to name. The whole thing spans around 100,000 light-years, from rim to rim, a breadth so broad that light itself, swift as thought, would take 100 millennia to cross it. Thinking of that, the neck of the hourglass widens. Time and distance begin to share the same sand. At the galaxy's heart sits no lantern we could touch, only a crowded region where stars circle a weight that does not shine. Astronomers call it Sagittarius A*, a supermassive black hole some 26,000 light-years from where we live. That number feels like forever in the language of a day, but it is closer to home than it sounds. We are tied to that hidden center by motion. The sun, the planets, every comet and grain in the long halo, all of us loop around the core together. One slow circuit takes about 230 million years. Dinosaurs rose and fell in less than a single loop. Life first reached land not even a handful of loops ago. We have not made one full lap since our world learned to grow forests. The strangeness is not only in the size, but in how quiet it feels inside size. We are moving quickly enough to cross a continent in the time it takes to count to 20. The sun towing us through the galaxy at roughly 200 kilometers per second. Yet the motion is smooth, and the room of space gives no wind to our skin. The ground seems still, the stars seem pinned. We sit with the impression of steadiness, while everything around us leans and drifts in a vast and patient whirl. Numbers return, and with them a kind of relief. We keep a few to steady the mind. 400 billion stars, a disk about 100,000 light-years wide, a black hole in the center, 26,000 light-years away. One orbit for our system every 230 million years. Light from the sun taking about 8 minutes to arrive at our world. These are small ropes across a canyon. We don't cross by rope. We cross by feeling the air change as we look down, then back up. Feeling here holds more truth than it first seems, because what we call small is not a dismissal. It is a recognition of proportion. Your life fits inside a human room, and yet the atoms holding you together required furnaces older than our star. Hydrogen has been in the universe since the beginning, but the carbon in your cells, the oxygen you carry, the iron in your blood, those were forged in ancient stars that lived, burned, and ended in vast size of light. Their ash seeded the clouds from which our sun and planets gathered. To be tiny is not to be separate. It is to be continuous. You are made of the neighborhood you wonder about. Even the way we see reminds us we are stitched to time. A light year is a step both across distance and backward in history. A star 100 light-years away shows itself as it was a century ago. The Milky Way is so broad that a glimmer from one edge will not touch the opposite edge for 100,000 years. Mapping it is an act of memory as much as measurement. The light reaching us tonight left when stories were told by fire, when the last mammoths were alive, when our languages were still learning the shapes of their first songs. We never meet the present of the stars, not directly. We meet their earlier selves and fill in the rest with patience. If you were to shrink our galaxy until it lay like a dinner plate on a table, the entire solar system would be smaller than a speck of dust hovering above it. Earth would be too small to see, and yet that speck holds every voice you carry in your head. Each thought, each care, each laugh of surprise, each piece of music that ever made you close your eyes and listen, all of it fits there. The smallness is astonishing, but it does not cancel meaning. It sharpens it. The laws that shape the arms of the Milky Way are the same laws that let a drop of water grow a skin and hold a reflection. Gravity keeps the planets in their paths and also keeps your cup on the table. Chemistry binds galaxies and binds a memory to the scent of rain. Scale changes, substance does not. There is comfort in standing under an old sky and remembering how other eyes once read it. Before glass and polished mirrors, before catalogs and clocks, people looked up and found their bearings in figures of light. The constellations were companions, calendars, migratory maps. The band of the Milky Way arched from horizon to horizon, not dim but textured, bright enough in some seasons to throw shadows. To some, it was the milk of Hera pouring across a velvet dome. To others, it was the seam of the sky or the path the spirits walk. They guessed at its nature with the tools they had, mist in the upper air. the breath of distant beings, a reflection from the outer atmosphere. The truth that we were peering through our own galaxy's crowded midplane was beyond reach, but the feeling was already correct. Vastness above, smallness below, connection between them. What we know now does not take that old feeling away. It gives it a clearer edge. We live inside a disk, so our view is the rim of the stacked stars, dense toward the center, sparse toward the sides. Gas drifts, dust veils gather. In some regions, newborn suns push cavities in the fog and light the walls from within. Elsewhere, aged stars glide on long ovals no one will ever see except as points that refuse to hold still. When a giant star ends, it shakes the medium around it. Shock and ash spill outward, and in time that stirred material cools and collapses again. From that, new stars and worlds rise. The Milky Way is not a picture hanging in a museum. It is a living, changing system, old and busy, and we are part of its work. Darkness in this story is not emptiness. Between the stars, space is spacious indeed, but it is not nothing. A few atoms here, a strand of dust there, faint rays, fields we write in equations, and feel only through their effects. Somewhere, a cloud folds and thickens. Somewhere, a cluster loosens and drifts apart. Somewhere, a comet takes on a thin coma as it approaches the sun and will later fold back out into cold and wait. Our orbit around the galaxy threads through environments that change slowly, like passing from forest to plain over generations. We do not sense the passing, but the traces are there in the record of rocks and ice, in the stories fossils tell, in the energy our world receives and returns. If a person could step outside the Milky Way and look back, the whole would appear as a broad spiral, a brightness swelling in the middle where the core bulges, the arms unwinding with a grace that seems still from far away. It would look calm. It would not be calm. Inside, stars slip forward in their lanes. Clouds brush and tangle and part. Shock fronts ripple, and the quiet hum of gravity conducts the motion. The arms are not solid things any more than a traffic jam is a wall of cars. They are patterns that matter, moves through a wave that gathers stars and gas for a while, and then releases them again. And at a distance, all of that motion settles into a single soft shape the eye is happy to rest on. It helps to remember that the galaxy does not place us at its center, and it does not need to. Meaning does not ask for centrality. Our address sits in the suburbs of a spiral arm, near enough to bright neighborhoods to see their glow, far enough to let life have long seasons undisturbed. Sometimes that ordinariness feels like a slight. Then it turns to relief. Ordinary is durable. Ordinary lasts. Ordinary leaves room for a long story to unfold, one in which a planet cools, oceans form, chemistry learns to copy itself, and after a while, a creature raises its head and wonders what the lights mean. When astronomers count beyond our home, the mind is asked to widen again. The Milky Way may be one among something like 2 trillion galaxies in the part of the universe we can observe. Many are smaller, many are larger, some are ragged, some smooth, some colliding in great tides of star formation that would shake us mute if we could stand near them. Our galaxy is average in that crowd, maybe a little quieter than some. Quiet is a good background for noticing. Quiet lets questions arrive and stay. The question here, how small are we, does not end in an answer like a number on a page. It rounds a corner and meets its reflection. We are small, to the point of invisibility against our galaxy's map, and yet we are the only part of that map, so far as we know, that can draw itself. The stars do not know they are stars. The spiral does not know it swings, but on one planet, circling one star, matter has learned to look back and take measure. That awareness is not a brag, it is a tenderness. It is the galaxy waking up a little to its own shape through our eyes and our fragile questions. All of this can feel like standing at the ocean, toes dug in, watching distances you cannot cross. There is a temptation to turn scale into spectacle, to pile number on number until the mind goes quiet from exhaustion. The gentler way is to let a few anchors hold and then watch what the feeling does. 400 billion stars, 100,000 light years, 26,000 light years to the center, 230 million years for a single orbit, 8 minutes for sunlight to touch your world. Proxima Centauri, a little more than 4 light years away, 2 trillion galaxies out there that we can see. The rest of the room is left for wonder to breathe. Wonder does not ask us to be large, it asks us to be present. On a night when the clouds thin, you might notice a faint wash, a stripe you cannot trace to a single point. That is our disk, seen from within, a sideways look through the densest part of our neighborhood. Somewhere in that wash, stars are being born. Somewhere, an old red giant sheds its outer skin like a lantern furling. Somewhere, a planet with storms the size of continents rolls in a slow turn. And somewhere, a rocky world with ice at dawn warms to noon. The picture is too big for us to hold whole, and that is all right. We are not required to hold it. We are invited to belong to it. Belonging is what turns smallness into kinship. The atoms that serve you today will return to the wider sea star, to cloud, to star, to life, to dust, paths that have been running for billions of years and, for a while, run through you. The simple fact that you can sit in a quiet room and let your thoughts climb from a speck of dust to a spiral with a luminous heart is part of that same story. The Milky Way is not only above you, it is within you, written into the elements that carry your thoughts and the rhythms that keep you steady. And when the question returns, as it will, how small are we inside the Milky Way? There is no need to grip it tight. Small enough to be humbled, large enough to be the glance itself. Bound by gravity and time, freed by curiosity and care, we bend closer to the galaxy and discover not just distances and numbers, but a quieter kindness toward the ground we stand on and the night that holds us. When you're ready, step outside with that gentleness in mind and let the sky answer in its own language. In a night with few names and fewer sounds, patterns rise without effort. A tight knot of blue-white points gathers where the eye comes to rest the cluster we call the Pleiades. Not far off, a cooler ember leans red against the dark Antares. And there, almost shy, a soft thumbprint of light, Andromeda, an island of stars beyond our own, so faint and small from here that a fingertip could hide it. This is the neighborhood's quiet trick distance, wearing the mask of nearness, immensity, arriving as a speck reminding you that the same kinship you felt indoors now extends out across the open, dark, from the dust beneath your feet to the galaxies that barely graze your sight. Long before any of this had names, people noticed that the heavens kept a rhythm. Rivers rose and fell, empires began and ended, children grew and old stories forgot themselves, but the stars returned on schedule. That regularity felt like a quiet promise that the world was not chaos. In that promise, minds grew bolder. They began to trace shapes, to hold seasons in the sky, to link what was overhead with what ripened in the fields. Curiosity learned to measure. Counting turned into calendars. Prediction became a form of listening. The night was not just decoration anymore. It was information, patient and bright. When a small tube of ground glass met a watchful eye in 1609, the relationship shifted again. Galileo tilted his telescope toward the pale band we call the Milky Way, and the haze that had seemed like breath on a window resolved into countless points. Those soft white lanes were not vapor, they were crowded avenues of suns. The sketch he made shows oceans of salt spilled across ink clusters, so dense they blur together. Even so, his view was just a thin slice of what surrounds us. What looks from the ground like a smooth stripe is actually our edge-on glimpse through a single spiral arm. Our address sits in a spur of that arm, the Orion Arm, a modest lane tucked between grander avenues. When your gaze drifts along that glowing river, you're looking down the length of this neighborhood through layered screens of gas and dust. It's like peering across town on a foggy night. You can make out the porch lamps nearest you, but the shape of the whole city stays hidden. The rest of the galaxy sweeps far beyond the horizon of our senses, wrapping us in every direction. The very material that makes it dust, grains, thin clouds, crowded fields of faint stars also softens and blocks our line of sight. We are inside the glow, trying to see the glow. Perspective adds its own mischief. Two lights that appear to sit shoulder to shoulder can be separated by hundreds of light years. Patterns we treasure, Orion's belt, Cassiopeia's crooked chair, the Big Dipper's ladle, only make those familiar outlines from where we stand. Step a few hundred light years to one side, and the arrangements fall apart, drifting into a scatter you would never have recognized. The dome of the sky is a map drawn by our particular location. And still, this shared illusion has always been a bridge, from fireside story to sea route, from harvest to hymn, from an ancient myth to a modern equation. Different tongues, same stars. There's comfort in knowing that the light reaching you tonight began its journey long before you thought to look for it. Some photons left their stars hundreds or thousands of years ago. They crossed gulfs of silence to arrive for the briefest instant, touch the back of your eye, and disappear. Each clear night is a mosaic of ages. A few of the lights have already ended, but their messages are still on the road. Others are only now taking shape, wrapped in swaddles of dust so thick even our best instruments must turn to longer, warmer wavelengths to glimpse the glow. We call it night, but it is the sunlit side of other worlds, the birthplaces of stars, the trailing embers of those that have gone quiet. What we see after sunset is simply the side of Earth turned away from the sun, our own long shadow thrown into space. That shadow gives us a window each evening. The stars wait at noon just as they do at midnight. Our eyes are only flooded by a nearer light. When the sun dips and the blue thins to deep, the window opens. Through it, we see a fraction of our galactic city. Our home lies in a quiet district, a comfortable distance from the crowded central bulge where radiation is harsher and gravity snags more fiercely. That quiet is a gift. It may be the reason our kind of life had time to learn and linger. Carry that window outward in your thoughts, and familiar shapes begin to loosen. From beyond our solar system, the constellations dissolve. The sun dims into ordinariness, one spark among billions. Earth shrinks past invisibility. All the stars you can see with bare eyes, every story drawn across backyard skies, collapse into a patch of space smaller than your fingernail. That is how local our naked eye universe is. The rest lies beyond reach, without lenses and antennas, beyond the limits of what the eye can gather in a glance. Even so, that tiny patch held everything that shaped our cultures. Sailors steered by it, farmers timed their work with it, poets and parents and mathematicians found in it a common grammar. The night we share is both small and intimate, a nearby window into a structure too large to see at once. To learn more, we've had to change how we look. Visible light is the first tongue, but the Milky Way's plane is full of dust that turns that tongue to silence. So we listen in radio waves that sift through the grains. We warm our eyes in infrared that can slip between particles visible light cannot pass. Piece by slow piece, the sketch sharpens. The map we carry is still a drawing made from inside the fog. It shows a bright bulge at the center, long arms unwinding with grace, and our sun riding roughly halfway between the core and the rim in a thin, rotating disk. Every time our tools improve, the page fills with new lines. We find streams of stars, faint ribbons, the debris of smaller galaxies shredded and folded into our halo. We find invisible clouds and filaments, the cold architecture that puts scaffolding behind the scenes. We find that the Milky Way has not grown alone. It has dined on its neighbors, again and again, leaving ghostly fingerprints across the sky. We also find nurseries, vast regions where gas settles and cools until gravity urges it inward, and dense knots flare to life. In infrared, these places glow with the warmth of newborn suns, still wrapped in their dust. Far out, we meet ancient families, globular clusters, spheres of old stars that orbit the galaxy like distant lanterns. Survivors from an early, crowded era. In between, the disk itself is laced with lanes of darkness. Not emptiness, but thick clouds where starlight cannot thread the needle. Even the black has structure. It shapes what we see, and inside it, new stories gestate. Think of the galaxy as a city, and our sun as a house on a quiet street. The nearest porch lights are the bright, familiar stars. Farther off, a gentle glow hints at downtown, the central bulge rising on the horizon. The neighborhoods stretch around us, each with its rhythms. The city never stops. New lights blink on while others dim. From our window we can only see a few blocks, and yet the hum of the whole reaches us. Somewhere in another district, someone else might be looking out too. To them, our sun would be just another faint lamp, not worth a second glance. The symmetry is steadying. We are not central, but we are made of the same rules, the same circles of birth and quieting, the same unhurried splendor. The night sky is not a backdrop. It is a boundary of awareness, the visible skin of a larger body we live inside. When you gaze at the Milky Way, you are not looking at something beyond reach. You are looking along the plane of our home, through its densest lanes, and out toward its thinner edges. What we see today is temporary, as all views are. Not on the scale of days or years, but across ages, the picture will change. Our system drifts. The sun will wander into fresher pockets of gas, skim past old remnants, move through gentle tides of starlight. The constellations will warp, the patterns will unknot and retie. The same neighborhood, unfolding new stories. It is easy, when attention returns to the familiar floorboards, kettle, window latch, to forget that these simple things stand inside the same expanse you were just imagining. The world feels self-contained, wrapped like a gift, and the galaxy becomes a postcard on the wall. But every sound and color you know lives in that larger field. Earth is not the center of anything but our days. It is a green-blue island floating in a sea so wide that our best measurements are metaphors we keep refining. From far enough away to hold the planet in one frame, the first impression is brightness. Sunlight scatters in the air and gives Earth a halo. Oceans flash, deserts and forests glow. Even the night side refuses to go fully dark. Storms send silent forks of light through clouds, and cities thread their tenuous necklaces across coasts and valleys, new constellations of our own making. The radiance is fragile, easy to overlook from a great height, but unmistakable once you learn to recognize it. This scale feels friendly. We can circle it in hours, cross it in days, press the shutter, and keep it. It has edges, a rhythm of seasons, the tug of tides that returns like breath. Even the slow drift of continents reads as order from this distance. Step outward, though, and what felt large compresses, oceans thin to blue brushstrokes, mountains flatten to texture. The air that keeps us alive shrinks to a gossamer film. Past that film, the light hardens. There is no haze to soften shadows. There are no shimmering mirages. Space does not look like the long exposure posters. To unassisted eyes, it is mostly a deep, exact dark, salted with points, so steady they seem pinned. The sun is present, but distant, its glare uncompromised by air. Everything it touches becomes stark, brilliant on the day side, cold dark on the night side. Seen in this clean contrast, Earth looks tender, almost too slight to carry what it carries. The first people who looked back described an astonishment that words could not contain. They saw the atmosphere as a skin, how thin it is, how exposed the world seems in the larger black. From that vantage, borders dissolve. The planet is one lit sphere. Many spoke most about the emptiness around it. Past the blue, there is only dark, no nearby harbor, no close star, no visible support. A single oasis lit by a small sun that itself is only one lamp among hundreds of billions. In that wider neighborhood, scales bend again. The nearest star beyond our own, Proxima Centauri, sits a little over 4 light-years away, more than 40 trillion kilometers. It does no good to stack digits. The mind slides off. Picture the sun as a small marble in your hand. The nearest marble would sit thousands of kilometers away. Between them, there would be nothing the eye could hold, just distance and the sparse drift of dust. Multiply that gap by hundreds of billions, and you begin to sketch the Milky Way's disk, a flat, turning expanse about 100,000 light-years wide and roughly 1,000 light-years thick, full of lanes and bridges and rooms we are still naming. Even the way light travels reminds us we are always looking into history. A light-year spans distance and time at once. A star 100 light-years away shows us its old face, the one it wore a century ago. The galaxy's far rim and near rim are separated by signal paths that take 100,000 years to cross. Each map we draw is a quilt of past and nearer past, stitched with care and inference. The present we inhabit and the past we observe converse in every photon. All this talk about numbers can feel like letting sand run through open fingers. It slips away. The steadier grasp comes from recognizing kinship. The forces that govern the city of stars also hold the furniture of a room in place. Gravity keeps planets turning in their lanes, and also keeps a cup from leaving the table without help. The chemistry that knits a nebula into a newborn star is the same chemistry that gives a raindrop a perfect edge and lets a memory cling to the scent of pine. Scale changes, laws do not. The neighborhood of night is not foreign land. It is the country we have always lived in without a full address. So the next time a clear evening grants you that faint wash across the sky, consider it not as something above, but as something through. Somewhere within that wash, a red giant is letting go of its outer layers in a slow, radiant shedding. Somewhere, a cloud collapses just enough to spark a chain of burning spheres. Somewhere, a comet fans a brief veil as it turns sunward, only to vanish again into cold. The darkness between the points is not blank. It is the scaffolding that lets the lights hang where they do. In those quiet spans, the galaxy keeps time. In one small corner, on a street that doesn't even know it's a street beneath a window, unaware it frames the widest view a person can hold. A listener leans into the hush and remembers that belonging is felt before it's measured. The sun is another star. The Milky Way is our city. The night we share is both window and mirror. We are brief and tiny, yes, but continuous with all of it. Light that slipped free of a distant star centuries ago crosses the same field that keeps your feet to the floor. The energy that mends your cells echoes what burns in stellar cores. Every breath of the galaxy's long story passes for a while through us. So we keep tuning instruments to dust and cold, tracing faint streams that hint at older collisions, walking the map from the inside. The sketch grows more intricate. New nurseries appear. Old clusters open their ledgers. Constellations drift, as ages do, what ages do. And through it all, the view from our quiet window stays a kind teacher, showing how a small pane can open onto the largest room, how a thumbprint of light can hold another galaxy, how a soft haze can hide a city of suns, and how, in this neighborhood of night, distance and closeness trade places without warning. The star at the center of our days wears a simple name because it is ours, but its nature is modest and shared. Astronomers call it a G-type main sequence star, middle-aged, steady, neither too large nor too small, a reliable hearth in a neighborhood full of hearths. It has burned for about 4.5 billion years and will keep its quiet work for roughly 5 billion more. To us, it is everything. Weather takes its cue from it. Green leaves borrow its light to build sugar and shade. The chemistry that keeps a body alive leans on the photons it releases. It's easy to imagine it as singular, a one-of-a-kind lantern, yet the galaxy is generous with stars like this. Many are smaller and redder, many larger and bluer, all turning hydrogen into light with a patience that outlasts continents, and with it, lighting the same grand room our small window has been opening onto all along. That light crosses about 93 million miles to reach us, a journey that takes roughly 8 minutes. Sunrise looks immediate, but it is already a memory. The shimmer on a lake, the bright edge on a cloud, each is the echo of a moment 8 minutes gone. The delay is tiny against a day, and still it is a reminder that distance whispers into everything. The warmth on skin began deep in the sun's core, where atoms meet under pressures and temperatures we do not carry words for. Energy born there walks outward through layers of plasma, scattering, changing direction, taking thousands of years to reach the surface. From there, it slips into space and arrives at Earth in minutes. Each ray that touches a field or a window carries the long history of that climb. Step outward in your mind, and the sun becomes a bright bead among many, its family of worlds circling in a slow dance of lines and ellipses. Mercury, quick and close, Venus, warm and veiled, Earth, blue and busy, Mars, rust and whisper. Then the broad grace of Jupiter and Saturn, and farther still Uranus and Neptune, with a scatter of smaller bodies beyond. On paper, it looks tidy. In space, the distances are vast. The moon feels far and familiar, and still, you could line up about 30 Earths in the gap between world and companion. Mars, even when friendly in its orbit, sits more than 50 million kilometers away. Neptune lives so far from the hearth that sunlight needs more than 4 hours to reach it. The system is both a neighborhood and an expanse. Proportion helps the heart catch up. Imagine the sun shrunken to the size of a large orange. On that scale, Earth would be a pinhead circling at about 10 meters, small enough to lose in the weave of a rug. Jupiter would be a marble nearly 50 meters out. The outer giants would be powder grains scattered hundreds of meters farther still. The nearest star, our closest stellar neighbor, becomes another orange placed more than 2,000 kilometers away. Between the two oranges, there is no chain of street lamps, no gentle bridge, only space. That emptiness is our normal. One star here, another very far there. A family of planets clings to one fire, and then the dark stretches until the next fire offers a similar scene with its own company of worlds. That one of these small worlds learned to carry water and weather and watchful minds is a delicate convergence. Distance from the sun had to be just so. A magnetic field had to push back the charged wind. Air and water had to settle into a balance. The crust needed to keep its cool and yet stay restless enough to recycle and renew. Stability had to endure for billions of years. The recipe is narrow, fragile, and temporary. Still, it held long enough for life to spark, change, and eventually look up. Awareness rose on a planet where the odds looked indifferent, and awareness began to ask how such a place came to be. Day hides the wider room. The sun's light washes the sky and turns the stars invisible to the eye. When Earth turns away, the veil loosens and the view opens. The same light that sustains us is also the curtain that keeps us from seeing how many other lanterns are burning. At night, the curtain lifts, and we remember that our lamp is one among roughly 100 billion in this galactic disk, nearly all of them likely shelter systems of their own. In that sense, our arrangement is ordinary. There are older systems and younger ones, arrangements stranger and simpler, simple harmonies and complex choirs spread through the Milky Way. Ordinary is a comfort. It means the rules that shaped us are not local tricks. Gravity, radiation, chemistry, they are fluent everywhere. Continuity keeps us company across distance. The hydrogen fusing in the sun's heart is the same hydrogen that fuels a star at the dark edge of the disk. The carbon that knits the cells in your hand is identical to the carbon glinting in a distant nebula. Scale changes, substance does not. This is what ties a kitchen table to a spiral arm and a heartbeat to a cluster of stars. One set of laws speaking in many accents. You can push a chair and trust where it will go, because a planet trusts the same mathematics as it curves around its star. Our planet is not fixed under this sky. It spins once every 24 hours. It circles the sun once each year. The sun itself moves, circling the galaxy's center in a path that takes about 230 million years to complete. Our whole system rides that path together, drifting like a bubble in a river current. We are never in the same place twice. Even in a single second, we move thousands of kilometers through the galaxy without feeling it. The air does not rush. The room stays quiet. The stars seem still. Loops within loops within loops, all nested, all kept by gravity's quiet arithmetic. There is no up on this scale. There is no down. There are only relations that change slowly. and a perspective that calls one moment now. The familiar patterns in the sky are travelers, not fixtures. Each star you recognize draws its own long orbit around the galactic center. Over millions of years, the shapes we teach to children will stretch and slip out of their frames until the constellations become strangers to our distant descendants. The comfort we take in their return each season lives on a shorter timescale. It is true enough for a life, true enough for a civilization, and yet the larger picture keeps moving with a patience beyond our calendars. From the ground, the cycle feels steady. The sun rises and sets. The same bright points return in winter and leave in spring. Clocks and planting and festivals all rise from this steady heartbeat. Behind the solid rhythm lies constant change. The solar system migrates through the galaxy. The sun ages. The Milky Way reshapes itself and is reshaped by its neighbors. Each moment of life on Earth unfolds inside this drift. Though our senses spare us the vertigo, you can catch a hint of this motion under a clean sky. Stand where artificial light does not bleach the dark, and the Milky Way becomes a visible bridge. As night runs, the bridge tilts and slides, not because it moves quickly, but because you do. The turning Earth carries you beneath the band of light. You are the motion. The stars are your gentle reference points. That simple truth links your body to the spinning world, to the orbit around the sun, to the long drift around the galactic center. The same physics holds the moon in its path and keeps the stars in theirs. Scale is different. Relationship is the same. Our world is fragile and resilient at once. Fragile because life leans on a thin layer of gas and water, a skin we can see from orbit as a delicate film. Resilient because the planet has carried life through impacts and ice, through extinctions and blooms. The sun could erase us with a small, sustained change in brightness, and yet for billions of years it has held steady within the narrow bounds that let forests breathe and oceans cycle. The balance is keen. It has held. Look up, and you stand in the only place we know where matter has learned to notice itself, that need not feel lonely. It can feel like joining a work already underway, a quiet process of the universe warming to the idea that it can be aware. Astronauts who have seen Earth from far away tend to reach for the same image. A small blue light set against a deep black, haloed by its thin air. The black is not empty. It is filled with photons on their way somewhere, with dust and fields and the faint wash of the galaxy beyond. From that vantage, you can see the sun turn oceans to silver, and you can sense, behind the brightness, the pale band of the Milky Way, stretched like a backdrop to everything you know. The darkness between stars is not a void, it is a field where light is constantly passing, even when eyes cannot gather it. Every beam that touches the planet crosses that field. Every reflection from a cloud or the moon returns to it. That is what it means to live inside a galaxy, to be immersed in a sea of arrivals and departures. We may feel at rest, and in a sense we are, because rest is always relative to something near, but the larger picture shows constant motion. The Milky Way breathes on its scale, arms turning, gas falling inward, stars being born and fading. Our world is a mote caught in that slow movement. Smallness is not a failing, it permits perspective. Because we are small, we can see the vastness. Because we are fragile, we understand how much balance matters. The galaxy is not aware, but we are. And in that awareness, it learns a little about itself. A photograph, a spectrum, traced in a lab, a long look into the dark. All of these are the Milky Way regarding its own reflection through human eyes. This turns the question of size into a different kind of measure. Tiny and essential are not opposites when the goal is to comprehend. The faint band you see arcing across the sky is not beyond you, it is around you. You are gazing through your own neighborhood, line of sight pointed along the field of stars that includes you. The light is ancient and local at once in the cosmic sense. You are in the middle, not underneath. The little world that seems apart is, in every measurable way, woven into the same structure. It helps to remember that the bright points are not all stars. Some are planets, the other members of our solar family scattering sunlight back toward us across empty space. They share our star, orbit on paths that do not cross, and obey the same gravitational thread that keeps Earth steady in its course. They are familiar because we named them and sent machines to visit them, because we have watched their phases and faces through lenses and over radio. They remain distant friends all the same, close enough to see, far enough that touch is rare and hard-won. Distance is easy to speak and hard to feel. The nearest of these companions is the moon, so present that anyone can point and understand the gesture. Its pull shapes tides, steadies the tilt of the earth, and lends the night a borrowed glow. It is still nearly 400,000 kilometers away. Light takes a little more than a second to cross the gap. If Earth were a basketball, the moon would be a tennis ball, and they would be about 7 meters apart. Between them is not air, but vacuum. No sound, no breeze, only the clean geometry of motion. The first travelers who crossed that space took about 3 days in a craft faster than any human vehicle had gone before. They looked back and saw the planet small enough to hide behind a thumb. Beauty mixed with unease, a home suspended. Beyond that familiar sphere, the numbers begin to stretch. Venus, at its nearest, comes within about 40 million kilometers. Mars, at a favorable alignment, sits around 55 million kilometers away. Numbers this large blur, so light becomes our ruler. Light from Mars, even when it is close by, needs about 3 minutes to reach Earth. A command to a rover arrives late. The reply arrives later. Conversations turn into messages to and from the recent past. Jupiter is between 30 and 50 light minutes away, depending on the year. Neptune is about 4 light hours. The solar system becomes a collection of time-shifted moments that only look simultaneous to us because we are small and our eyes are loyal to the present. Even the sun is 8 minutes behind what we feel. The more distant we look, the longer the lag grows. The word neighbor survives despite all of this. We still call these worlds neighbors because we share a star and a kind of rhythm. The word shrinks the vastness into something the mind can hold. For thousands of years, these wandering points were the only other worlds we knew. Against the background of stars that keep their relative positions, they moved. They were the wanderers, the planets. No one knew what they were at first, only that they did not behave like the rest. Centuries of watching taught us they were places, reflecting the sun's light like our own world does. Mercury runs close to the glare, quick and hard to see, a dawn or dusk secret. Venus, wrapped in bright cloud, outshines everything in the night except the moon, and sometimes fools the eye into thinking a star is about to bloom. Mars drifts as a small red coal among the familiar figures. Jupiter and Saturn move more slowly, their light steady and grand. A simple telescope reveals Jupiter's bands and oval storms and little moons parading night by night. Saturn shows its delicate rings, broad in reach, and made of ice and dust spread across hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and yet so thin the eye imagines it as a scratch of light. These sights changed us. When Galileo turned his tube to Jupiter, he found 4 small lights that slid from one side to the other and back again. They were moons, not stars, circling a planet. Not everything moved around Earth. The sky was not a fixed dome, it was a system in motion. Each new discovery closes another ring around our field of view. A small moon here, a storm there, a fine rim of rings, a plume, an ice world with a hidden sea, a world with methane lakes, a faint arc of dust. Every detail sharpens what's familiar while pushing the edges outward. Our orbit becomes a footpath inside a much larger map. The feeling of smallness returns, and with it, the calm sense that small things can still be whole and true. We could sort these facts into a tidy ledger and call it finished, but the ledger is only a door. Beyond it lies the feeling that stitches numbers into a picture. The sun is ordinary and precious. Light is swift and always late. The solar system is orderly and immense. The nearest star is close in the language of galaxies and impossibly far in the language of steps. Earth depends on thin balances and has kept them long enough to make room for eyes and thought. Everything moves and the room feels still. The planets are both family and far. The moon is next door and an ocean away. We look and we learn, and the very act of looking folds us back into the story we're trying to tell. Farther out, the planets stop feeling like neighbors at the end of a quiet street and start to resemble distant cities across a dark sea, linked only by faint radio lanterns. 2 small emissaries left long ago, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, launched in 1977, are still on that road. They threaded past the giant planets, took quick portraits, and kept going until the sun's wind thinned and finally gave way. Now they move through interstellar space. Each carries a golden record: greetings, images, music, a hopeful bottle set adrift for whoever might someday find it. They are more than 23 billion kilometers away. Their whispers need over 20 hours to reach us, a gentle delay that turns every contact into a message from yesterday's edge. And because of that soft pause, the great map gains another crease, while we, small and patient, keep listening. Distance changes its meaning out here. On Earth, we translate miles into time, an afternoon's drive, a night's flight, a chain of layovers stitched by signals and roads. Beyond the blue air, distance stops making accommodations. There are no shortcuts, no highways where the medium itself helps. Space is the absence of help. Every kilometer is non-negotiable, silent, exact. We know the world's ahead because of one faithful courier: light. It crosses the gulf and carries temperature and color, the fingerprints of clouds and rocks, the signatures of storms. A telescope catching glint from Saturn's rings is really catching sunlight, launched more than an hour earlier, bounced from ice, and sent home across 1 billion kilometers. That exchange never stops. A quiet web of light is always ringing the system, and we read it like mail. None of the planets shine by themselves. They borrow. Venus glows because thick clouds fling most sunlight back. Mars, with iron-dark soil, keeps more than it returns, and so shines less. Through observation, we learned their characters, not as lists, but as moods you can almost feel. Mercury is a scorched stone, its days blistering, its nights knife cold. Beneath Venus's soft brightness is a heavy furnace, air dense with carbon dioxide and laced with sulfuric acid. Mars is a hush of channels and deltas, a world that once moved with water and now keeps only traces in dust and salt. Jupiter is weather, given the scale of a world bands and boiling ovals, lightning within clouds the size of continents, a red storm larger than Earth that has turned for centuries. Saturn wears rings, as if someone traced long arcs of frost and let them hang in silence. Its moons keep watch like bright beads. Uranus and Neptune are cool, pale blues of gas and ice, slow dancers far from the sun's warmth. Together they make a family that feels both varied and bound. 8 major planets, dozens of moons, countless smaller bodies, each keeping its own tempo while orbiting the same lamp. Set beside that company, Earth is modest. 1,000 Earths could fit inside Jupiter. 1,000,000 could disappear inside the Sunday. Yet modesty suits a living world, not so massive that it crushes its own chemistry, not so small that it loses its air. Water can pool. A magnetic field can fend off the wind. Temperatures can settle into seasons. Significance comes from conditions, not bulk. From far away, our home would be a pinprick, and still that pinprick holds oceans and forests, cities and songs, an entire conversation happening on a dust mote. Look down from above in the mind's eye, and the orbits draw themselves like threads. The inner worlds hurry, the outer ones stroll. The whole arrangement keeps its poise through gravity's patient pull. For billions of years, the pattern has held. Not perfectly, but well enough for the clock to keep time. Paths don't cross, and yet nothing is truly alone. Jupiter's weight can redirect a comet, either flinging it outward toward the cold or bending it inward toward the Sunday. The asteroid belt is braided by resonances, lanes sculpted by invisible music. A small body drifting near a giant can have its future rewritten in an hour. Everything moves together, separate, linked, and always in conversation. Our cameras have flown to many of these places, and their gifts are small miracles of patience. A blue sunset on Mars where thin air scatters light into cold hues. Methane rain over Titan, and lakes like dark glass beneath an orange sky. Lightning flickering in Jovian clouds. Plumes from Enceladus, white as breath in winter, hinting at warm oceans beneath ice. Each photograph is a postcard, sent across hours of darkness, weakened by distance, freckled with cosmic noise, and still clear enough to teach. They remind us that space is silent only from far away. Up close, the planets are busy with weather, seasons, and change. Yet even these distances feel neighborly beside the gaps between stars. Our nearest star system, centered on Proxima Centauri, is a little more than 4 light-years away, about 40 trillion kilometers. If you slipped into a Voyager-like craft, you would need tens of thousands of years to arrive. That stretch is the shape of interstellar space, not merely far, but presently beyond any road our bodies can take. Still, separation does not cancel belonging. Light continues to arrive. Gravity continues to weave every star into the galaxy's motion. The emptiness between systems is not nothing. It is the shared room through which everything moves. Think of the solar system as one verse in a longer song. The sun's light links the lines. Gravity holds the rhythm, and the whole stanza moves as a single phrase through the Milky Way. Each planet keeps to its own path, but all share the larger journey. Orbit one star, ride one spiral arm, drift together through interstellar fields. The distances grant each world room, to be itself, its weather, chemistry, and color, and they grant us perspective, too. If our nearest companions sit millions of kilometers away, imagine the breadth of a galaxy that can hold hundreds of billions of such lamps. Even so, we can point and name. Evening by evening, we greet bright wanderers. Distance doesn't erase familiarity, it deepens it. The thinness of their light makes every sighting a small triumph. Far past Neptune, the glow loosens, warmth fades to memory, the sun hardens into a bright point, not so different from the others. Orbits still exist, but the room feels altered, emptier, yes, and somehow wider, like a prairie after a forest. You have crossed from the solar neighborhood into the outskirts of the sun's domain. This region isn't empty. It's stocked with leftovers, ice, dust, rock, the debris of formation. When the planets were gathering, sunlight and the gravity of the giants swept much of the remaining material outward. It settled into expanses that reach for unimaginable distances. The first of these is the Kuiper Belt, beginning just beyond Neptune and extending for billions of kilometers. It is a country of frozen worlds that rarely feel the sun's touch, turning slowly on elongated paths. Among them are Pluto, Eris, Haumea, Makemake, and countless smaller bodies, cold, dim, and stubborn. They carry traces of how the solar system began. Pluto's story is a gentle reminder of how knowledge clarifies. Found in 1930 as a faint moving dot, it was welcomed as a ninth planet, and later placed with its kin when we realized it was one of many similar worlds. The change was not a demotion, but a truer address. Sunlight out there is roughly 1,000 times weaker than on Earth. A day is long. A year lasts more than 2 centuries. If you stood on a plain of nitrogen ice, the sun would look like a bright star, and the darkness would feel almost physical. When New Horizons arrived in 2015, after nearly a decade of flight, it revealed a world of wide plains and jagged mountains, delicate atmospheric hazes, and subtle change even in that deep cold. Then the craft kept going, threading deeper into the Kuiper Belt and visiting a small contact binary object. 2 bodies gently joined, the quiet signature of slow collisions in a place where time has room. Keep going, and the sun's breath weakens. The solar wind thins to a whisper, then meets a pressure it cannot push aside, the interstellar medium. There is a boundary where the sun yields to the galaxy. We call it the heliopause. Beyond that skin, the Milky Way takes over. The voyagers felt the crossing. Particles from the sun fell away. Particles from beyond rose. They are now farther than any human-made object has traveled, drifting outward with no harbor to reach, carrying a record and a question. Past that boundary, the dark seems more complete, but it is not void. A few atoms per cubic centimeter drift there, along with dust, grains, and simple molecules, the ashes of older stars, the seeds of future ones. If you could float with them, you would see a sky more exact than any earthly night, stars unblinking, the Milky Way a pale arch that refuses to end. There would be no wind, no sound, no sense of up or down. The quiet would be total and still not empty. Presence would be stretched so thin that only instruments could weigh it. Distances gain new units. The Kuiper Belt fades around 50 astronomical units from the sun, 50 times the span between Earth and its star. That is only the foyer. Farther out, a great spherical swarm is thought to surround us, the Oort cloud. It may reach to 100,000 astronomical units, a shell of icy bodies held so loosely that a passing star or the galaxy's gentle tide can set some of them falling inward. Those are the comets we greet with a gasp, strangers that have slept for ages and suddenly grow veils and tails as they warm. Most remain where they are, orbiting quietly for billions of years, too far and small for any probe to visit. We infer their home from the paths they trace when they come. Edges blur here. Gravity still ties these distant objects to the sun, but the knot is loose. Nearby stars pull as well. The boundary of the solar system is a fade, not a fence, the influence of one lamp shading into the shared light of many. The darkness that fills these rooms is simply the absence of concentrated flame. Energy isn't missing, it is dispersed. Even in that thinness, there is a collective glow, overlapping light from hundreds of billions of stars, so faint our eyes cannot see it unaided, yet real enough to be measured. From Earth, that glow is the Milky Way's band across the sky, a soft proof that we live inside a luminous sea. It helps to stop thinking of the galaxy as a pile of points and start feeling it as a gradient. Density deepens toward the center and thins toward the rim. We live in a quieter lane. Beyond the Oort cloud, the sense of belonging widens. The sun's authority wanes. The galactic field asserts itself. Space belongs to many influences at once. The draw from our star, the tug from Alpha Centauri and other neighbors, the steady hand of the distant core. The dark becomes communal. Gravity here is a chorus. Continue outward long enough, and you would pass near other stars, near in the language of galaxies, which still means light years apart. Between us and the next lamp are no visible bridges, only thin gas, dust so sparse you could drift for a lifetime and never touch a grain, and magnetic fields threading the emptiness. Yet light keeps traveling. Photons leave our sun, and many slip forever into the general glow. Others end their long errands when they meet a comet's coma, a dust grain, or the top of a cloud and become warmth. Every beam that touches Earth has crossed that shared room, passing through the same field that holds your feet to the ground. Even emptiness moves. The interstellar medium ripples. Shock waves from ancient supernovae plow through, compressing clouds that may someday collapse and shine. Magnetic fields twist and steer charged particles along invisible paths. Cosmic rays arrive with energies we can measure but cannot feel. Everything has structure. It is simply stretched so thin that our senses call it nothing. Instruments teach us to listen where touch fails. For a long time, we mistook the solar system for the whole of everything. The leap to a sky of suns was hard. The leap beyond that to a garden of galaxies harder still. But questions were stubborn, and tools grew steadier. We found relics beyond Neptune, a crowded fringe of frozen worlds. We traced a boundary where the sun's breath thins and the galaxy's begins. We learned to read chemistry from starlight and to watch weather flicker in a single changing pixel. Little by little, the room widened and our small address sharpened. Planets as distant cities, stars as separate fires, all carried by the same great river. Light stayed our messenger, gravity stayed our guide. Even where the sun shrinks to a hard point, it is still ours. Even past the heliopause, we remain inside the larger body that holds it all. Small, yes, and separated by spaces that defy our steps, but gathered each evening by the same quiet band of pale light. A reminder that our world is a moving room in a vast, luminous house, and that even the farthest travelers we have made, tiny voyagers singing across the dark, are only crossing another hallway. Beyond those last familiar orbits, what once felt infinite begins to feel like just one room in that greater house. The farther the mind drifts, the more the word edge loosens into a soft gradient. Behind us, the sun blends into the general starlight. Ahead, the Milky Way stretches like a wide, dim river about 100,000 light years, from rim to rim, so large that beyond stops being a direction and becomes a point of view. Nothing is left behind. We have simply joined a broader field. The darkness is not separation. It is inclusion at a larger scale. Every point in that field is a star, most with company worlds circling, moons keeping time, perhaps even eyes, somewhere wondering about their own boundaries. Between those scattered lamps, deep space is a country of extremes. Temperatures settle just a few degrees above absolute zero. The nearest warmth is the faint wash from distant suns. Yet, this is not lifelessness. It is a quiet workshop. Dust drifts and gathers. Over long patience, the cloud thickens until gravity takes the lead. Collapse, heat, a new star wakes. Around it, a pale disk grows. Pebbles kiss and cling. Ice and rock learn the old lesson of becoming planets. The darkness we imagine as emptiness is the galaxy's fertile ground, waiting for the next cycle to begin. If you could see the whole scene at once, the sun ebbing behind, other stars ahead, faint filaments of gas threading between them, you would feel placed at the middle of something enormous and alive. Look any way, and the view repeats. Faint light, slight motion, soft potential. Beyond dissolves because there is always more. The space between stars is not a border. It is the substance of the galaxy itself, the water in which these fires float. Time changes character out here. With no sunrise and no shadow wheeling across a floor, seconds lose their cues. You might borrow the heartbeat of a pulsar as a clock, or mark your hours by the barely measurable drift of one star against another. Over 10,000 years, the bright patterns shift by only a breath. Change becomes geological and patient, almost too gentle to feel. The darkness deepens, not only with distance, but with duration. And still, the familiar is not lost. The sun sends its influence outward as an expanding bubble of light and wind. Within that chill, traces of us travel too. Early radio songs, radar pings, tidy handshakes with far probes. Most will fade into the background hiss, but for a while, they mark the presence of a small, curious species circling a yellow star. Our voice continues long after the speaking stops. Every grain of dust born near the sun, every long-period comet stirred from cold storage, carries a thread of our origin as it drifts into wider rooms. The edge of the solar system is not a fence. It is a place of merging, where our local order dissolves into the larger fabric of the Milky Way. From that perspective, the dark stops feeling empty. The sun's light thins, and other lights replace it. The neat orbits that once organized our sense of home give way to the broad pull of the galaxy. There is no wall, no crossing sound, only the gentlest recognition that the scale has changed again. What once seemed infinite now feels local, and the next vastness becomes the new ordinary. Deeper still, where the sun's warmth is memory only, the darkness has texture. It carries the oldest whisper, a cool bath of microwave light left from the universe's beginning. That cosmic background is a dim glow filling all directions, a memory older than stars, older than galaxies. Even the quiet remembers. In a soft paradox, the farther we step from the planets, the nearer we come to the first light, etched into space itself. In the middle of all that distance and dark, Everything we know still depends on a single star. We rarely call it a star. We call it the sun, as if it were weather rather than an object. Ordinary among billions, irreplaceable to us. From a planet near Alpha Centauri, it would look like a modest yellow point, unremarkable among its neighbors. From here, it fills days, draws shadows across fields, and keeps the calendar steady. It warms oceans, drives wind and rain, sketches seasons, and, quietly, touches mood and health. Ordinary and singular at once, one of those simple contradictions the universe wears comfortably. The sun is wide, about 1.4 million kilometers across, and holds 99.8% of all the mass in its system. It is not solid, but plasma, not fixed, but churning. Its visible surface, the photosphere, keeps near 5,500 degrees Celsius, a temperate room compared with the core, where temperatures rise above 15 million degrees. In that central press, hydrogen meets hydrogen and becomes helium, releasing energy that walks a slow maze outward for thousands of years, scattering and changing direction before it finds a clear path into space. Once free, it takes about 8 minutes to reach Earth. Sunrise is always a memory from 8 minutes ago. The shimmer on water is already the recent past. Every ray that warms a hand on a window pane carries the long history of that climb from the heart. In practical terms, the sun powers nearly everything we know. Fossil fuels are ancient sunlight saved in plants and plankton. Winds are uneven heating made into motion. Waves ride on the moon's pull but are shaped by sun-fed weather. Even in the deep ocean, where no ray arrives, the energy feeding life traces back to cycles driven at the surface by light. The sun is the reason anything changes at all. And for all that authority, it is steady. Gravity pulls inward, fusion pushes outward. The balance holds like a hand steadying a lantern. That equilibrium has lasted for billions of years and will last for billions more, the kind of stability that lets complexity try its luck. Look closer, and the calm, bright disk turns lively. Magnetic fields arch into space and carry loops of plasma that rise and fall. Cooler, darker patches, sunspots appear and fade in rough 11-year cycles. The outer atmosphere, the corona, is hotter than the surface and extends for millions of kilometers, a faint halo we notice best when the moon hides the glare. Charged particles stream outward as the solar wind, shaping space around every planet. When eruptions fling denser gusts our way, Earth's magnetic field catches them. Curtains of color flow near the poles. Those auroras are a gentle reminder that we live beneath the constant influence of a star. Inside, the recipe is simple to name and grand in effect. Mostly hydrogen, some helium, traces of heavier elements. By fusing hydrogen into helium, the sun loses mass. About 4 million tons every second turn to energy by the old line E equals mc squared. Even at that lavish rate, it keeps fuel for roughly 5 billion more years. Toward the end, the center will run short of hydrogen. Pressure and gravity will renegotiate. The star will swell into a red giant. Mercury and Venus will almost certainly be taken. Earth may stand at the tide's fragile edge. The surface will cool to a deeper red, yet brighten overall as the reach expands. After a while, the star will shed its outer layers and leave behind a dense, hot core, a white dwarf glowing beside a faint shell of gas. The light will fade, but the matter will not be wasted. It will drift, mix, and someday help seed new stars and worlds. The long future feels far, but the process is already underway in the most patient way. the sun changing by amounts too small for a lifetime to notice. Self-control on such scales is part of the sun's grace. If fusion runs a little fast, pressure swells the core, cooling and slowing the reaction. If it runs a little slow, gravity squeezes, heating and quickening it. A thermostat written in gravity and temperature keeps balance. The rules are few. The result is long order. Much of the universe's complexity rests on platforms like this. From Earth, the sun's daily motion is a trick of our own turning. We spin, light slides across a room, shadows move and lengthen. The sun rotates too, about 25 days at the equator, slower near the poles. That uneven twist tangles the magnetic field, stores tension, and releases it in flares and coronal mass ejections. The 11-year cycle of spots and storms rises and falls, subtly changing space weather, tugging at radio chatter, nudging patterns in the upper air. Light is the headline. Magnetism writes the smaller print. The bond runs deeper still in the lives we lead. Long before anyone named fusion, people honored the sun with stories reborn gods and daily chariots, watchful hearths for the world. We measured noon by shadows, stitched calendars to solstices and equinoxes, and planted when the light returned. Our sleep and wakefulness follow circadian rhythms, tuned to its rise and fall, a biological memory of dawn and dusk. Understanding what the sun is did not turn the wonder down. It dimmed superstition and brightened intimacy. Morning light across a table is not abstract energy. It is a direct line from a star's heart. The sun's spectrum is generous. Visible warmth, infrared comfort, ultraviolet that can heal and can harm. The planet's thin defenses shape what reaches us. Ozone filters away the worst of the UV. Air and clouds scatter and soften. In that balance sits life's chance. Too little light and the ocean locks. Too much and the stones glow. We live in the narrow lane where light becomes food. Beyond Earth, the same lamp paints different scenes. Mercury bakes and freezes day to night. Venus, wrapped in dense cloud, keeps too much heat and becomes a furnace. Mars starves for warmth and holds only the memory of rivers. Farther out, the giants still feel the sun in whispering ways. Their tops shimmer in ultraviolet light, and their magnetic fields wrestle the solar wind into auroras of their own. The sun's reach does not end at the planets. Its wind stretches outward until it slowly gives itself to the interstellar medium, leaving a faint wake of particles and field, a soft trail through the larger room. We call it our star, to claim kinship as much as address. It is not just the center of this system, it is part of who we are. We evolved under its rays, tuned our eyes to its spectrum, leaned our clocks against its angle. Without it, we would not merely be cold, we would not be. Knowing there are billions like it does not blunt the feeling. This one lifts the hallway shadows where you live. This one lays warmth along your sleeve. This one is the heartbeat behind every green leaf and every breath that follows. The sun also ties detail to immensity with a thread you can trace. The fusion of protons in a core we cannot touch becomes cane fields and pine forests, becomes heat lifted into storms, becomes calories that turn into motion and laughter and thought. The path from smallest to widest is unbroken. The sun is above us and within us, carried in the oxygen we trade with trees, in the carbon we borrow and return, in the energy that keeps a mind awake long enough to care about a sky. Step back again into the farther dark, and the rhythm continues. Our solar family is one verse. The galaxy is the song. Each planet keeps its private path. Together, they share the larger journey, one star orbiting the galactic center, roughly every 230 million years, riding the quiet lanes of a spiral arm, drifting through interstellar fields. The distances between planets remind us that isolation and connection can coexist, each world alone in its track, all of them linked by a single light. And when the sun's rule thins, the galaxy's hand is waiting. Gravity blends with gravity. Space belongs equally to many lamps. If you drift farther still, the sun becomes one point among many, and the idea of beyond loosens once more. The stars lie in all directions. The faint light is everywhere. There is motion, but so slow it wears the costume of stillness. You might mark time by a pulsar's steady beat, or by the slow change in a pattern you thought would never budge. The night grows older as it grows larger, yet our traces keep moving. Radio waves from old concerts, the high ping of radar, a spacecraft's patient pulse. Most will fade into the common background. Some will be swallowed by dust. A few will travel for ages without meeting anything at all. For a while, though, the record is there, a sign that a small species once learned to wonder aloud. Think of the Oort cloud icy bodies in an enormous, delicate sphere, perhaps reaching 100,000 astronomical units from the Sunday. Think of a long sleeping comet, nudged inward by a neighbor's distant tug, falling slowly toward the warm center until it grows a veil and a tail and becomes a visitor we can greet with the naked eye. Think of the Kuiper Belt's frozen worlds, Pluto and kin, quiet archivists of the earliest days. Each distance sounds like exile until you remember it is all one structure. The farther we go, the more the edge proves to be a gentle blend. What once felt infinite turns out to be local in a larger frame. The pattern repeats, but it does not belittle. It comforts. Smallness is not a sentence. It is a way of belonging. We are not outside this vastness, measuring it with a ruler and a frown. We are inside it, made of it, carried by it. The light that reaches your eyes is ancient, and also local in the language of galaxies. You are not beneath the Milky Way so much as within it, looking along the crowded lanes of your neighborhood. And so the story loops back to the sun, because home is where the thread is tied. A sphere of plasma keeps its balance for billions of years. A planet rides a safe lane. Water holds together. Chemistry learns to copy itself. Awareness opens its eyes and asks what holds the sky. The answer is not a single word. It is a relationship. Gravity and light, distance and time, smallness and continuity. The sun carries us like a lantern on a slow walk. Its gravity holds, its wind shields, its light instructs. We are passengers and participants, protected by its warmth, powered by its rays, held by its pull, moving through a house of stars that has no single door marked beyond, only hallways opening into larger rooms, each reminding us that scale can deepen tenderness, and that knowing how small we are is another way to know we belong. Numbers begin kindly and then slip from the hand. We're comfortable with bowls of apples, a line of cars, a crowd in a park. We can stretch to thousands and still feel the count holding shape. But somewhere between what we can picture and what hangs above us, counting loosens into a wider feeling. The Milky Way lives in that loosening. Here, the difference between 1,000,000 and 1,000,000,000 stops being arithmetic and starts being surrender. Astronomers offer a range, perhaps 100 to 400 billion stars, and even the smallest guess is enough to quiet a room. Dust hides many of them. Distance hides more. We sample a patch, weigh a region, and scale the result. The answer stays indescribably large, which is its own kind of truth. On a flawless night far from cities, the naked eye may hold 5,000 stars in total, with half below the horizon at any moment, 2,000 or 3,000 lights at most, and still the sky feels busy. Yet in a galaxy of hundreds of billions, that view is less than a sliver of a sliver. The brightness overhead is a neighborhood glow. Beyond the near lamps lies a deep city we cannot resolve, a river of blended starlight that our eyes smooth into the Milky Way's pale band. Early observers learned this the moment they pointed small lenses at the haze. The blur split into pinpoints, and behind those pinpoints, more, better glass, darker sights, longer exposures. None of it finished the count. Each improvement only widened the field. The sky's answer to better questions was more sky. The challenge isn't only how many stars there are, but how different they can be. Most are smaller and dimmer than our sun-quiet red dwarfs that sip fuel and shine for spans longer than we can sensibly say. Some are heavy and brief, blue-white torches that spend themselves in a few million years and end in collapse or eruption. Between these poles lies a spectrum of temperaments, white and yellow, orange and blue, quick and patient, solitary and social. Our star sits calmly in the middle, a modest citizen whose steadiness lets fragile things try their luck. Darkness, then, is not absence, it is sum. Light spread too thin to prick the retina becomes shadow, and distance gives shadow its weight. We live in a balance where there is enough light to guide us and enough depth to keep a sky. When the question turns to counting, the method must change. Rather than tally stars as dots, astronomers weigh the galaxy, subtract the share belonging to gas and dust, and divide by an average star. It is like weighing a forest instead of counting trees. The figure lands back in the same staggering range, and the lesson holds. To tick every star by name would take longer than civilizations stand, and in that time new stars would arrive, old ones would dim, and the ledger would write itself to mystery again. Among the billions, companionship is common. Perhaps about half of all stars live in multiples, pairs that orbit a shared center, triples balanced in delicate knots, small clusters that drift together for a while before thinning into the field. Gravity writes music in these systems. Motions braid, tilt, and settle. Around them, dust and rocks circle. Planets find lanes. Moons learn their nightly rounds. In recent decades, we have confirmed thousands of worlds beyond our sun, and every detection points outward to more. Statistically, there may be more planets than stars in the Milky Way, hundreds of billions of chances for weather, for oceans, for skies that collect a color at dusk. The shape of the whole is patient and alive. Stars are born in cold clouds where molecules drift hydrogen foremost, carbon monoxide a tracer, a scattering of more complex companions. Gravity tightens these regions until heat rises and a newborn star pushes outward with light and wind. That push sculpts the cloud and seeds its edges for the next generation. Some siblings stay close and become clusters. Some wander alone. Creation and release continue together, like breath. In our lane, the Orion, Cygnus, Spur neighboring stars are separated by a few light years on average. The words imply closeness. The facts say trillions of kilometers between evening porch lights. The spiral arms that give the galaxy its grace are not rails, they are patterns. Think of waves crossing an ocean. Water moves, the shape migrates. The crest is never the same water twice. So it is with arms. Gas compresses as it enters. Stars kindle. They live and drift away. The arm remains ready for new birth. From afar, the spiral would look like a frozen flourish. From within, it is memory and motion at once. The Milky Way stretches roughly 100,000 light-years across and about 1,000 light-years thick in the disk, with a brighter bulge at the center and a faint halo of old stars and globular clusters roaming far outside. An even larger halo of dark matter, felt more than seen, cradles the disk and sets the pace. We cannot step outside for a portrait, so we infer. Radio telescopes map hydrogen's whisper and trace where gas pools and flows. Infrared eyes pierce dust to reveal stars otherwise hidden. X-ray observatories catch the fiercest places where matter slams into itself or falls into deep wells. Layer these views and a composite emerges, a barred spiral, a stretched central bar of stars from which the main arms unwind. Our sun lives in a quiet spur between larger arms, Sagittarius toward the center, Perseus toward the rim, about halfway from core to edge. None of the boundaries are sharp. Density fades, the pattern holds. At the heart sits a crowded bulge. Buried near its middle is something we do not see directly, only by the dance it demands. Sagittarius A*, a supermassive black hole with roughly 4 million suns mass in a space no larger than our solar system. It feeds slowly and flares sometimes, rippling energy through nearby gas. Finding it changed how we read galaxies. Most large ones appear to carry such heavy hearts, and the growth of each may be braided with the growth of its city of stars. Where the bulge thickens, stars whip around in hours and days. Clusters meet and part like slow tides. Clouds fold and ignite. Far from the center where we travel, the mood softens. Stars spread out, hazards thin. The arm's crest takes hundreds of millions of years to pass. The sun circles at about 26,000 light-years from the core, moving near 200 kilometers per second. One lap is about 230 million years. Since the solar system formed roughly 4.5 billion years ago, we've made around 20 circuits, a slow carousel turning while continents wander. Oceans shift their edges, forests rise and fall, and only lately do creatures learn to draw constellations and measure their drift. We mark time locally, day to night, season to season, and trust the larger scales to keep their counsel. They do, and still they change. To draw this living atlas, we read many alphabets of light. Radio shows what dust hides. Infrared warms the cold into view. Ultraviolet and X-rays catch suddenness and heat. Stacking these glimpses, we sketch. A mission like Gaia is turning the sketch into a film, measuring more than 1 billion stars with exquisite care until positions become motions, motions become orbits, and orbits become history and forecast. From these data we rewind to find ghostly streams, the torn remains of smaller galaxies folded into ours, and we look forward to see how the Milky Way may subtly reshape itself in ages to come. Counting becomes narrative. 1 billion entries become a biography. The uncountable is not only quantity, it is time. Each star lives a span millions of years for the largest, billions for the smallest. Birth in a cold cradle, a long steady shine, a swelling farewell, and then a white dwarf, a neutron star, or a black hole. The band above us is nursery and marketplace and quiet lane at once. Even the dark matters. Molecules drift there, hydrogen foremost, carbon monoxide marking paths, hints of longer chains waiting for gravity to nudge them closer. Those dusky regions are stars in seed. The galaxy recycles with elegance. The calcium in bones, the iron in blood, the oxygen in breath, the carbon in thought, born in older suns that died before ours. Counting stars becomes counting contributors. It also becomes counting possibilities. If planets are plentiful and signs say they are, then oceans may be plentiful too, and skies, and patient beings who look up and ask their own gentle questions. Somewhere, perhaps, a different river of light arches across a different night, and someone wonders which word will hold it. The uncountable stops being statistics and starts being a measure of potential. Holding that scale too hard can tip the mind. Let the uncountable be itself. Keep a few anchors, hundreds of billions of stars. A disk about 100,000 light years wide and roughly 1,000 thick. A sun orbiting in about 230 million years. A 4 million sun heart hidden in the bulge, and let feeling take over where figures taper. Wonder is not a failure of math. It is the right response when math reaches its edge. From within, the Milky Way is a pale, irregular ribbon. Photographs deepen it into an arc stitched with color and dark lanes. What we see is a cross-section through a greater thing, a flattened swarm whose smooth glow is billions of points, layered until the eye calls it continuous. A halo of old stars and globular clusters circles far out, and beyond that, a wider shroud of dark matter steadies the whole. Gravity keeps time, motion keeps shape. We cannot leave for a true portrait, but we do not need to. The picture sharpens without our stepping outside. Radio maps trace arms by hydrogen's whisper. Velocities reveal the central bar. The Orion Cygnus spur holds our address between Sagittarius and Perseus. From above, the arms would look like slow currents in a whirlpool, concentrations that drift through rather than rails to ride. Near the center, speeds climb. Farther out, they slow. The net is a form that holds without being rigid, movement turned into pattern. Deep in the bulge, stars slingshot around absence at astonishing speeds. We do not see the whole, we see its demand. Here, at the quiet edge of that influence, the galaxy is generous with calm. The arm passes like weather that takes eons. Newborn clusters light and fade. Faint streams lace the halo and tell of ancient meetings. The city keeps changing while remaining itself. If there is comfort in the uncountable, it is this: the more we discover, the more continuous things feel. Laws that hold for a star, hold for a stone. Patterns that shape an arm echo in rivers and rings of ice. The Milky Way is not a painted ceiling. It is the environment that made us possible. Every atom, every light, every shadow belongs to it. Our small role is to notice, to learn, and to carry that noticing back to the rooms where sunlight turns dust into little stars. The count will never finish. The story will not run out. And under a dark sky, the pale band will keep offering what numbers cannot, a quiet, generous arithmetic of wonder. Every orbit carries us through new neighborhoods, denser arcs where the star fields thicken, calmer gaps where the light thins, drifting veils of dust and open windows of dark. To us, the sky feels steady, but on the scale of stone and ocean beds, it slowly rearranges, constellations breathing into new shapes as we circle the heart of our galaxy. The disk we inhabit isn't a perfect plate. Its edges curl in a gentle warp, one side tipped upward, the opposite sagging down, as if a quiet wave passed through long ago and never fully left. Tides from smaller companion galaxies and the uneven pull of the dark matter halo likely coaxed that bend into being. On top of the warp ride, subtler ripples, slow vibrations moving through stars and gas, like the shimmer that runs across a pond, when a distant boat turns. Measured over millions of years, the disk quivers. Even at this scale, motion doesn't stop. It only softens its voice. It helps to think of the spiral not as a design frozen in place, but as a process. Stars kindle in compressed swaths of gas, shine for spans that dwarf mountains, and end by returning enriched material to the medium around them. Shock waves from supernovae sweep out caverns, and at their edges, squeeze new nurseries into being. Creation and dismantling never truly separate. Each prepares the other. The arms we sketch in our minds are not rails, but currents, a pattern that remembers what passed and invites what comes next. Imagine rising far above the disk until the Milky Way lies beneath, like a pale whirlpool. The arms would look like trails of soft smoke, brightest near the middle, fading into gauze toward the rim. Off to one side, you'd notice smaller companions circling the large and small Magellanic clouds drawn on long, slow paths. Faint, ragged streams would arc through the outskirts, star trails left by smaller galaxies pulled apart and folded into ours. The shape we see today carries those memories. It is order ridden with edits, a calm face with a history of meetings. Inside the disk, perspective trims, curves into bands. When we face the center in Sagittarius, the sky grows crowded. The Milky Way thickens into a bright seam, darkness cut by lanes of dust. Turn outward toward the rim, and the haze thins to a gentle sheen. Those dark lanes are not emptiness, they are hushed storehouses. Visible light falters there, but infrared reveals structure nested within structure. In the same regions where old stars die, new ones wait to begin. Destruction and birth are neighbors, each gives the other room. The thought of so much light can trick us into imagining stillness, but the pattern is sustained by motion. Stars drift into a spiral arm, live their chapters, drift out again. The arms persist because new stars keep forming along the wave, the way the bright knot of a traffic jam holds a shape though the cars pass through. When astronomers checked how fast stars orbit at different distances from the center, they expected the outer ones to slow. Instead, the speed stayed almost flat. The hint was firm. There is more mass than we can see. Something dark and widespread matter that doesn't shine holds the disk together from the shadows. Without that halo, the spiral would loosen and spin apart. Even with all our eyes and instruments, parts of the picture remain behind curtains. We can trace arms with radio maps and weigh motions with patient surveys, but the far side of the disk is dimmed by dust and distance. Symmetry tells us it's there. Faint signals confirm it. Detail eludes us. We live in a place both known and mysterious, close enough to measure, large enough to stay beyond complete possession. The spiral's gentleness isn't only its line, it is its habit of revealing itself in layers. When you lie under a dark sky and see the pale river arch from horizon to horizon, you're looking through one of those arms, not at it. We are inside the scene, moving with it. The stars that seem fixed are tracing slow, stately orbits around the center. Our sun carries us through arms and between them, past knots of gas and through rooms so thin they feel like pure night. The entire solar system is a small carriage moving along an outer lane on a carousel whose turn is too broad to feel. There is no hum of speed, no wind to mark our passing, only the quiet geometry of a motion that takes hundreds of millions of years to show its hand. Speed the whole dance up in your mind and the arms would breathe, winding tighter, loosening, bright knots kindling and fading as new stars take their places. At true pace, it becomes a study in patience. The galaxy's background is this slow turning, a rhythm so steady that life can ignore it, and so persistent that everything we are rests on its calm. Think of what has cycled through those arms, generations of stars, living and leaving offerings. The carbon, nitrogen, oxygen in you were forged in furnaces far older than the sun, then scattered, cooled, and gathered back into the cloud that birthed our system. The spiral is not just architecture, it is the route by which matter travels, from fire to dust to living breath and back again. The shape is a record, and we are written into it. We can describe, model, and dream our way to an outside view, but we will always observe from within. That is not a loss, it is a kind of intimacy. Our vantage grants a cross-section, a layered sightline that mixes past and present. It lets imagination supply the rest without closing the door on wonder. When the band is visible tonight, you're peering edge-on through your home's structure. Every faint shimmer is a sun. Every dark river hides raw material for more. Locating ourselves in all this is both simple and immense. We live on a small world, circling a modest star, embedded in a minor spiral arm, often called the Orion Cygnus Spur, between two larger rivers of light, named Sagittarius and Perseus. It is a calm lane in a busy city, far from the center's crush, close enough to belong to the shape. From above, we would sit about 2/3 of the way out from the core, roughly 26,000 light-years from the heart. Even light needs 26 millennia to cross that span. In the language of kilometers, it is a number that dissolves into proportion. We orbit the center at about 220 kilometers per second, and even at that pace, a single loop takes more than 200 million years. Since the solar system formed, we've completed only around 20 circuits. Each time Earth goes around the sun has shifted a little along its own path. We never return to the exact same patch of the galactic sea. Nor are the constellations permanent. They are temporary arrangements that make sense for a few thousand years before the slow tide of stellar motion changes the drawing. Between us and the nearest bright suns lies a lot of nothing that isn't empty. Space here holds a handful of atoms per cubic centimeter, a thin medium through which light from many addresses flows. The disk itself is about 1,000 light-years thick, where the stars are concentrated. Above and below it, the density fades into the halo, a realm of old stars and globular clusters on long looping paths. The disk is gently warped. We sit close to its midplane, not perfectly centered, but well within its stoutest layers. This position is neither too crowded nor too spare. Closer to the core, stars pack tight, radiation surges, gravity plays rougher with planetary stability. Farther out, the material thins. Heavy elements may be too scarce to seed rocky worlds. Here, between extremes, systems like ours can persist. Some astronomers speak of a galactic habitable zone, not as a wall with a sign, but as a loose description of where conditions are kind to long stories. Local conditions carry their own history. The sun now coasts near the rim of the local bubble, a cavity in the interstellar medium, likely carved by supernovae that went off long before we arrived. The gas around us is hotter and thinner than in neighboring regions. As we continue our broad orbit, we will drift into denser patches again, then out, a slow exchange that may subtly change the background our planet sails through. On human timescales, this is invisible. On the scale of forests rising and mountains wearing down, it is a soft tide. If we wrote our address like a line from a quiet ledger, it might read, third planet of a G-type star in the Orion Cygnus spur of the Milky Way, about 26,000 light-years from the galactic center, traveling near 220 kilometers per second within a slightly warped disk. The words are factual, but they also describe belonging. An address is not only a point, it is a relationship to a larger map and to the motion that passes through it. Every direction you look into the galaxy. Toward Sagittarius, dust hides a bright crowd, and radio or infrared light reveals the packed heart where stars wheel fast, and the central black hole keeps gravity's deep well. Turn toward Auriga, and your gaze skims outward, where the field grows sparser and the night finds room for more dark. The band appears brighter one way and softer the other, because your line of sight passes through thicker or thinner layers of the disk. What you see is not a picture glued to the sky, but a thickness measured by light. From far above, our sun would vanish into the general glow. The solar system would be a whisper within a whisper. And yet, carried in that common light, would be everything familiar: oceans, trees, faces, the whole delicate story folded into one moving dot. Scale would evaporate at that altitude, continuity would not. No matter how far you drift, our thread remains woven into the fabric. Within a few dozen light years lies our local neighborhood. Stars like Alpha Centauri, Sirius, Epsilon, Eridani, Procyon, and many more, some with their own retinues of planets. From their rooms, our sun is only another bright point. This thought does not make the sky colder, it makes it shared. Islands of light scattered through a dark sea, each with weather and histories we barely begin to know. Near the center of the city, thousands of stars can occupy a cubic light year. Out here, the average distance between neighbors stretches to several light years. That spacing can feel like isolation, but it's also why fragile systems endure. Fewer close encounters mean fewer disruptions. We exist not because we're central, but because we're far enough from the maelstrom to last. Beyond the disk, the halo encloses us tens of thousands of light years of old stars and globular clusters circling on grand, tilted tracks. They are relics of early times, witnesses to the Milky Way's growth through mergers and meals. Some collisions left their signatures as faint star streams arcing through space. Our galaxy changes by adding, blending, smoothing, and the traces linger. The sun's course will carry us through different rooms of the disk over the next 100 million years. We may drift into a denser arm, then back into a quieter gap. These passages probably make their mark at scales we rarely feel. Subtle changes in the drizzle of interstellar dust, shifts in the rain of cosmic rays. The patterns of a galaxy can lean down into the lives of single worlds and trace soft lines there, too. It is tempting to picture ourselves as an audience beneath a turning dome, but we are part of the cast, moving with the scene. The galaxy does not revolve around us, we revolve within it. Every sunrise is local choreography layered atop a slower dance. The term galactic sea fits because the Milky Way behaves like an ocean, swells and troughs, waves that persist while the water flows through, currents guided by invisible depths of mass. We float in a current we did not make, cannot steer, and do not need to. It carries us just the same. Stand in imagination on a planet circling a star in another arm, and our situation would rhyme with theirs, a small address midway from center to rim, riding the same grand rotation. Location becomes relationship rather than fixed coordinate. To know where you are is to know how you move. There is comfort in an address like this. It gives scale without stealing meaning. We are small and not misplaced. We travel a stable path in a quiet lane of a spiral more than 10 billion years old. Everything we know fits into that context. One system among billions contributing its light to the whole. Integration, not insignificance. We are part of the pattern shaped by it, sustained by it, drawn along by it. The view will shift, though no one will notice in a single lifetime. Constellations will ease into new arrangements. New stars will unmask themselves as old ones dim. Our path will carry us through arms and out again, the spiral turning beneath a patience that never tires. Somewhere within that long measure we keep our place, a modest system in the Orion Cygnus spur, circling the center, surrounded by stars and dust and the faint, steady glow of our shared home. We will never see it whole with our eyes, but every time we look up we feel its presence, a quiet geometry that binds every point of light into one vast curve and invites us, kindly, to belong to it. Beyond the familiar edges of maps, ordinary intuition loosens its grip. Our minds are tuned to rooms and roads, to miles you can walk and coasts you can trace. Even oceans and continents still feel graspable because ships can cross them and eyes can hold their borders. But the moment we step beyond Earth's shoreline, the anchors slip. The spaces between worlds, between stars, between the great islands of galaxies, spread so far beyond our senses that even precise numbers begin to feel like soft symbols. It helps to ease outward by stages. Earth spans about 12,700 kilometers. The moon waits nearly 400,000 kilometers away. Light takes a bit more than a second to cross that quiet gap. Already the mind stretches. Then the sun arrives at a different order of distance, about 1 astronomical unit, 150 million kilometers, and even that is only the warm inner yard of our address. Neptune circles around 30 times farther, a place where sunlight needs more than 4 hours to arrive. The solar wind itself fades beyond 100 astronomical units. Beyond that, the idea of a home boundary turns to gradient, a distant shell of icy bodies. The Oort cloud may extend outward for tens of thousands of astronomical units. At those reaches, the sun is a bright point. Its pull is a suggestion. Light needs more than a year to touch the far edge. Small words cover wide rooms. Now lift your gaze to the nearest stars. Alpha Centauri lies a little over 4 light-years away, about 40 trillion kilometers. Compared to that gulf, our solar system folds into a compact porch. A light-year is the distance light travels in a year, a smaller word for an unmanageable span. Say 10 light-years, and you've named 10 years of travel at the universe's speed limit. Say 100,000, and you've spoken the width of the Milky Way, a river so broad that a beam leaving one shore will not wash the other for all of human history. We try to picture these spans as roads to be driven, but the scale resists. Voyager, the farthest craft we have sent, has been flying almost half a century. It moves fast, by human measure, tens of thousands of kilometers per hour, and yet would need more than 70,000 years to reach the nearest star. The galaxy is not unwelcoming. It is simply vast enough that motion itself becomes a slow art. Models help, and then they betray us. Make Earth a marble. The moon becomes a tiny bead a few centimeters away. The sun grows to a ball, a little more than a meter across, set roughly 100 meters from your marble. The outer planets occupy city blocks. Neptune recedes to the far field. And the nearest star on this scale? Another meter-wide lamp, more than 2,000 kilometers away, with almost perfect emptiness between. Space is not mostly things, it is mostly space. The Milky Way, dense with hundreds of billions of lights, is still almost entirely room. We see across that room because it is clear. Photons slip through the interstellar medium, occasionally scattered by dust, mostly unimpeded, and so the night carries news. The Milky Band overhead is a collective illusion, countless suns blended by distance into a soft glow. We have learned to measure what we cannot hold. For nearby stars, astronomers use parallax. As Earth moves around the sun, a star appears to shift against the far background by a tiny angle. From that triangle, distance falls out. The wobble is so slight that even the closest bright neighbors move by less than an arcsecond, a coin's width seen from kilometers away. Farther out, the wobble is too small to catch, so we lean on brightness and color, comparing what we observe to what similar stars should produce, and infer how far their light has traveled. Each step is careful. Together, they draw a map. Beyond the Milky Way, the numbers open again. Andromeda glows about 2.5 million light-years away. Its light began toward us long before the first hearths warmed human camps. At the edge of what we can see, galaxies shine from more than 13 billion light-years away. Their light stretched into red by the expansion of space itself. Each distant smear is both a photograph of the past and a ruler written in color. Distance and time interweave so tightly that every point of light becomes a memory. Because nothing outruns light, information itself is paced by distance. We cannot see the present state of far things, only earlier chapters. Somewhere a star may have vanished moments ago. We will not learn of it until its last light arrives. The universe is a patient exchange of delayed greetings, nearest neighbors almost current, the far country answering in time. At such scales, the words we use, light year, parsec, risk becoming tokens. Context restores meaning. The swiftest spacecraft humanity has launched, racing at tens of kilometers per second, would still need tens of thousands of years to reach Alpha Centauri. Crossing the galaxy at that speed would take hundreds of millions. The Virgo cluster, a nearby congregation of galaxies, rests over 50 million light-years away. Even light takes ages to commute between such districts. What we can see at all the observable universe is a bubble about 93 billion light-years across, not because reality ends there, but because time does. Beyond our horizon, light has not yet arrived. And the pattern within our bubble is not random. Galaxies gather into groups and clusters. Clusters string along filaments. Wide voids fall between. From far enough away, the arrangement resembles lace, a cosmic web of light and absence. Our Milky Way is a bead on one of those threads, part of a small association called the local group. The gaps are so broad that a galaxy could sail a lifetime and never touch another. Distance can feel like loneliness until you recall that space itself is stretching, carrying everything outward together. Expansion changes the meaning of apart. The farther two galaxies are, the faster they recede, not because they plow through space, but because space swells between them. There is no single center for the pull. Every point can be taken as middle, because the growth is everywhere at once. In that frame, distance is never merely a span. It is a history of motion. Light crossing those spans arrives, carrying news from one moment to another, turning darkness into a record. So a quiet comfort returns. The size of things does not exile us from them. The same rules that guide an apple's fall guide a moon's arc and a galaxy's slow turn. Gravity is patient across sizes. Light keeps its habits across rooms and across gulfs. The distances defy intuition, but the principles do not. Continuity lets the mind accept what the senses cannot hold and makes the far feel like an extension of the near. Analogies help us walk a little farther. Picture the galaxy as a city at night, each star a house lit from within, miles of quiet land between, highways of nothing carrying light instead of cars. Or imagine the observable universe as the surface of a balloon sprinkled with dots. As the balloon inflates, every dot sees every other dot drift away, even though none is running. Imperfect, yes, but enough to return motion to the numbers. Even the emptiest reaches keep their geometry. Filaments of galaxies span hundreds of millions of light years. Voids yawn between. The Milky Way and its neighbors are stitched into one of those threads by gravity too faint to feel yet strong enough to coordinate the dance. Within the thread, nothing stands still. Our world spins. Earth orbits. The sun moves through the Milky Way at a few hundred kilometers per second. The galaxy itself drifts with others along the larger flows. We do not feel a wind because the medium is thin and the motion smooth. If you could pause the universe and look down, the solar system would glide like a small bead around a lamp, and that lamp would be circling the galaxy's center on a tilted, slightly elliptical path. The sun bobs gently above and below the galactic plane over tens of millions of years, a slow tide that carries us from denser layers to quieter ones and back. Some think such passages might subtly change the rain of cosmic rays or the traffic of comets. Whether or not those links hold, the image is right. We are passengers on a soft swell. The local group itself is a conversation held by gravity. The Milky Way and Andromeda, the two largest members, are on a long approach, about 2.5 million light-years apart, and drawing closer at roughly 100 kilometers per second. The figures sound urgent until you lay them against the scale. They will not meet for around 4 billion years. When they do, their stars will mostly miss one another, passing like fireflies in a field, while gravity reshapes both into a new form. The merger will be grand and quiet, an event of light and tide rather than impact. All of this motion, near and far, happens at once. The world under your feet turns. The planet loops the sun threads a path through the spiral arm. The arm rides the galaxy's rotation. The galaxy drifts within the web. Stillness is local. Movement is the background melody. And because the distances are so large and the medium so smooth, that melody plays without rattling the glass. So when you look up and a faint star touches your eye, remember what the beam has crossed. Years into lifetimes, lifetimes into ages, ages into the width of a galaxy. Each glimmer is a delayed hello from a different time. The mind cannot hold the full length of the road, but it can feel the continuity underfoot, the same gravity, the same light, the same patient rules, binding near and far into one quiet, generous scale. In that recognition, distance becomes less of a wall and more of a belonging. From our small lane in the spiral, we ride inside something larger, our local sheet, where several nearby groups of galaxies drift together like a slowly sliding raft. The whole raft leans toward Virgo, a crowded archipelago whose combined gravity tugs across tens of millions of light years. That pull folds into an even broader current, a long glide toward the region astronomers nicknamed the Great Attractor, hundreds of millions of light years away. None of this is frantic. It's the quiet choreography of the cosmic web. Galaxies gathered into groups, groups into clusters, clusters into superclusters, each threading along filaments of matter that lace the dark. There is no true still. There is only belonging to a motion. Stand still on the ground, and you share the ground's turning. The turning shares Earth's orbit. Earth's orbit shares the sun's path around the galactic center. The galaxy shares the drift of its sheet and supercluster, while space itself stretches between the far islands. Rest is local agreement. The constellations keep their shapes for a long human gaze, but over millions of years they loosen and redraw themselves, stars sliding along their private curves. What feels eternal is a long moment, not a fixed picture. If you could accelerate time without breaking it, the sky would breathe. Spirals would wind and unwind. Small galaxies would stretch into filaments. Clusters would gather and relax, as if a great fabric were inhaling and exhaling. Our own arms would lighten waves as newborn stars flare, then dim, while supernova shocks roll outward and coax new nurseries at their edges. The energy is immense, yet the music is slow enough to be silent. Gravity is the author of these paths, weak in any instant, relentless across ages. It curves space, invites matter to meet, and sets the rules that keep planets looping, stars schooling, and galaxies threading the web. On top of gravity's patient tug, the expansion of space adds a second motion. Between bound islands, the fabric stretches. Farther dots separate faster, not because they speed through a pre-existing room, but because the room itself grows. Light crossing that room stretches, too, shifting toward longer colors. By reading that shift, astronomers map the flow, filaments bright with clustered galaxies, and enormous quiets between voids, so broad a single galaxy could traverse them for ages and never find a neighbor. Within the large pattern, smaller dances continue. Stars orbit their centers, planets follow stars, moons follow planets, debris follows in faint belts, even atoms hum. Stability doesn't come from stillness, it comes from motion held in balance. Let anything be truly motionless, and gravity will nudge it until an orbit, a fall, or a tide begins again. Our particular drift points roughly toward Hercules on the sky. The Milky Way itself leans toward the Great Attractor, and beyond that, toward the heavier Shapley concentration. Step back, and there are only centers within centers, each defined by the mass that gathers there. The humility in this isn't diminishment, it's relief. The same equations that let a leaf spiral to the ground also describe a star's loop and a galaxy's migration. The rules don't change when the stage gets big. Computer models let us watch a condensed history, misty matter settling into knots, knots flaring into galaxies, galaxies pooling into clusters, clusters sliding along filaments. Over billions of years, the drawing evolves, but the web's overall weave remains alive in appearance, alive in motion, born of simple laws applied for a very long time. Our local calm weather, seasons, familiar shorelines, is an eddy inside that river, not apart from it. Close to home, the neighborhood has a name, the local group. More than 50 galaxies joined by mutual pull. Two great spirals lead the family, our Milky Way and Andromeda, surrounded by dozens of small companions. Under a dark sky, Andromeda is a faint thumbprint, yet that blur holds perhaps 1 trillion stars. Between the two giants move dwarfs and irregulars, some tethered, some already unraveling into streams. The large and small Magellanic clouds, visible from southern latitudes, drift like lantern smudges, strung to us by threads of gas. Other satellites, Sagittarius, among them, are so close they're being folded in. Their stars now arc across our halo as pale, tidal handwriting. This is how a spiral grows, not by building everything in place, but by gathering, mixing, and smoothing across eras. Andromeda grows too, with its own retinue and its own streams. The two giants are already bound. The expansion that separates far clusters yields here to gravity's local claim. In about 4 billion years, their paths will cross and recross, the disks passing through one another, reshaping, igniting waves of new stars where gas is pressed and stirred. Collisions between stars will be rare. Space inside galaxies is mostly room, but orbits will redraw, halos will blend, and the end result will likely be one larger, rounder city of light. By then, our sun, if it remains, will be in a late, quiet chapter. The local group spans on the order of 10 million light-years, not edged by a wall, but by where its gravity ceases to dominate. Inside, most members are small. They matter. Dwarfs supply fresh gas and stars through gentle mergers. Their streams sketch the past like fossils in motion. The group doesn't float alone, either. It sits inside the flattened local sheet. The sheet joins the Virgo supercluster. Virgo belongs to a filament. The filament crosses voids you could pour 1,000 groups into without touching a coast. What we call nearby is part of a scaffold that reaches beyond sight. Seen from a remote perch, the local group would look serene. 2 slow spirals closing in, dim companions in wide ellipses, the whole assembly drifting together. Our sun's light would be lost in the Milky Way's glow. Earth would be smaller than an ocean, yet everything we know would ride inside that modest smear, participating in the same field as every other point of light. Within this setting sits a boundary that isn't a wall, the observable horizon. It's defined not by matter, but by time, the farthest distance from which light has had time to reach us since the universe began. Because space has been expanding while that light traveled, the sphere from which the oldest photons can arrive today lies roughly 46 billion light-years away in every direction, making the observable universe about 92 billion light-years across. Beyond that, more universe continues unseen, not because it is hidden, but because its messages have not yet arrived and, for many regions, never will. Every night sky photon is a traveler from that moving sphere, carrying age as surely as color. Some began when mammoths walked, some left when oceans were young, some started out when there were no stars, just a hot, bright fog. Hold that thought for a beat. The page you read by, the lamp on a table, the pale seam of the Milky Way, each is part of a conversation conducted at the speed of light across a room that grows as the speaking happens. There is a gentleness hidden in all these immensities. Motion is not the enemy of rest. It is the reason patterns persist. Orbits keep climates within ranges where seas can remain liquid and leaves can learn their seasons. Galactic rotation keeps the disk coherent. Cosmic expansion keeps the grand structure from collapsing back into a featureless blaze. The atoms that make you were once inside far suns that circled other lanes. Those suns ended, their elements drifted and mixed, and now those atoms are here, breathing and listening as the galaxy turns. The web is vast, the thread is continuous, and in the quiet between pulses, we can feel the belonging as clearly as the distance. The farther a light has traveled, the older its story. Some stars we admire are tens or hundreds of light years away. Their glow began before our present worries had names. Light from remote galaxies left when mountains were younger and languages unborn. And the faint, even wash that fills every direction like a cool hush, the cosmic microwave background comes from when the universe was a baby, roughly 380,000 years old. Before that era, space was a fog of charged particles and light tangled together, bumping and scattering so often that nothing could move straight. As the cosmos cooled, protons and electrons finally paired into neutral atoms. Suddenly, photons could slip free and wander. Those first free travelers have been on the road ever since. Their wavelengths stretched by expansion into microwaves. Their message, a snapshot of the first clear moment. That glow sketches our horizon of sight. It isn't a wall, it's a limit set by time. Beyond it, the universe goes on, likely wearing the same physics and the same kinds of patterns, but its light has not reached us yet. Each year, new shells of distance join the visible as their photons finally arrive. Yet the fabric between far places also stretches, and in many directions it stretches so swiftly that light launched now will never catch up. There are regions whose new stories will always outrun our hearing. The cosmos may be endless. Our window is not. This horizon isn't chosen by instruments. No mirror, however perfect, can peer past the delay written into light, so the farthest we can see is the farthest that time has allowed. Look deep, and the picture becomes a time mosaic. Nearby stars a few years younger, remote galaxies, billions of years younger, and the oldest panel, the soft afterglow of the first transparency. There is no single now to gather everything. The sky is stitched from different whens layered together. Map what lies inside this bubble, and a skeleton appears. Bright filaments and walls of galaxies, separated by enormous quiets. The web continues as far as measurements can trace. Closer in, clusters like Virgo and Laniakea braid the threads into thicker ropes. Farther out, the strands thin until they blur into background light. Meanwhile, another boundary matters: the cosmic event horizon, the distance beyond which anything emitted today can never, ever arrive here. As dark energy hastens expansion, more galaxies slip across that river. What they sent long ago will still wash ashore, but new signals will be carried beyond rescue. In far futures, the sky will simplify. Only our merged local family will remain visible. All else will be redshifted into silence. Even now, the oldest galaxies we detect with infrared eyes arrive in crimson whispers, their youthful blue stretched long. The James Webb Space Telescope listens for those whispers, peeling back new chapters: how the first stars lit, how small clumps grew into islands of light, how the nearly uniform baby picture grew grain and texture in the microwave background itself. Tiny temperature ripples differences of mere millionths of a degree mark the seeds of everything that would come later. Read those ripples, and you learn the mix of matter and energy, the curve of space, the rhythm of growth. All of this draws a careful line between what can be known and what can only be imagined. Beyond the horizon there is surely more, perhaps very similar, perhaps with gentle variations, but it will never share its light with us. Our bubble is not the universe. It is our portion of it, the reach of our messages and theirs. Each observer anywhere would draw a similar sphere centered on themselves. There is no absolute center, only countless local middles, each horizon overlapping with others, in a grand, expanding quilt. A limit can feel like a door closing, but here it also feels like a pulse. As time flows, the edge of sight moves outward. New details arrive. The picture clarifies. Technology helps too. Better mirrors, colder detectors, subtler ways to tease meaning from faint signals. Each step adds an extra feather of distance, a finer slice of the past. We will never empty the sky of questions. That is not a failure. It is the reason curiosity can rest and wake again tomorrow. When the scale of it all begins to crowd the heart, small can seem like a confession. But small is not the opposite of meaning. It is the condition for it. Structures nest inside structures, atoms into molecules, molecules into cells, cells into bodies, bodies into communities, planets around stars, stars into galaxies, galaxies into filaments. Each level relies on the stability of the level beneath. A planet's path looks modest against a galaxy, yet both follow the same law, gravity's patient curve. Chemistry that powers a leaf shares logic with fusion that powers a star. Change the scale and the melody stays. Peer inward and complexity blooms. A single cell holds a city's worth of machines. DNA, not much wider than a whisper, carries instructions for forests. Atoms are mostly space. Mass hides in a tiny nucleus. Electrons trace wide, airy halls. The pattern repeats, emptiness granting room for motion, motion arranging structure, structure making new motions possible. Without gaps, no dance. Without dance, no order. So smallness becomes a kind of address rather than a verdict. The brain warm, wet, and no bigger than 2 hands cupped can imagine a universe 92 billion light years across and can listen for the first light that ever went straight. That is not a contradiction. It is kinship. The cosmos has grown a piece able to notice the cosmos. Zoom out, and Earth shrinks to a pale point. Zoom in, and that point holds oceans, migrations, lullabies, the scent of rain after heat, the quiet triumph of a seed splitting its shell. Perspective is not a contest, it is a lens. At one setting, the galaxy is a river of suns. At another, a single heartbeat is a universe of rhythms. Both are true. Both matter. And between them runs a thread, the same physics, the same unfolding, the same soft insistence of time. If your heart says yes to this gentle kind of looking, a quiet like and a soft subscribe, help this small harbor find others who might need it too, only if it feels right, only when it doesn't disturb the hush. So let the numbers be large and the room be larger still. Let the horizon be a circle of time, not a fence. Light keeps arriving with news, old and kind. Somewhere, a photon set out when the first atoms took their places. Somewhere another left a distant shore when no word for shore existed yet. Somewhere, a third bounced off ocean and window to touch your eye tonight. Small is how we hold any of this at all. Fingers around a cup, a thought around a star, while the great quiet goes on, vast and steady, and we, already part of it, listen. From any place you stand, the universe offers a true answer in its own accent. The tiny and the vast are not rivals. They are 2 lenses on one continuous story. A whisper of redshift in a distant smudge tells how space stretches. A grain-fine wrinkle in the ancient microwave glow marks the first seeds of structure. The smallest signals carry the largest meanings, and the great shape of things is written in details delicate enough to balance on a photon. Seen from far away, Earth would be a pale mote circling an ordinary star. Nothing about that view announces oceans, weather, forests, languages, or the hand that reaches for another hand in the dark. Yet within that mote, the universe learns to look back at itself. Awareness is not outside the cosmos, but one of its lawful outcomes, arising where matter, energy, and time hold their balance long enough for complexity to bloom. Scale here is not a rank of importance. It is a path into detail. Stars sketch patterns. Planets carry chemistry. Cells keep the score of life. Minds collect the music. The same rules run through every measure. Gravity bends paths from apples to galaxies. Light keeps perfect time whether it crosses a room or 100,000 light years. Quantum steps set the stages of atoms. Those stages scaffold molecules. Molecules build cells. Cells remember. Consistency across size is the gentle grammar that lets us read the world at all. If we were as large as suns, we could not think. If we were much smaller than cells, we could not be. Our scale, this middle shore between nucleus and nebula, is the one where noticing becomes possible. Smallness also holds the power of texture. A galaxy shows the sweep. A planet shows the terms. A leaf shows the method. Zoom and structure multiplies. Lattices in ice, spirals in shells, branching in rivers and neurons, filaments in the cosmic web. The universe repeats its logic in different keys. Order from motion, pattern from relation, novelty from time. What looks empty is the room where connection happens between atoms, between stars, between questions and replies. We live inside motion that feels like stillness. The Earth turns, the planet orbits, the sun drifts around a quiet lane of the Milky Way. The galaxy rides a filament toward deeper gravity. Nothing is fixed, and yet almost everything endures long enough for meaning to gather. Constellations will melt and reform over ages. Our local group will merge and settle. Horizons will shift as space expands. But the laws remain steady, and steadiness is a kind of kindness. It lets rivers find beds, species find niches, and minds find patience. Beyond what we can see, more of the same continues. Other lanes, other clusters, other nights, blooming and fading without us. The horizon is not a fence, but a calendar, a circle marked by how far messages have traveled. Every year, fresh arrivals add new brushstrokes to the first mornings of time. We will never hold it all. We do not need to. A single clean measurement, a single well-placed metaphor, a single unhurried look can open a door that does not close. Belonging runs both ways. The calcium in your bones remembers the heat of vanished stars. The iron in your blood crossed space inside the ash of an explosion. The oxygen you breathe is a gift from generations of suns. Your thoughts are currents carried by sodium and potassium, common elements with uncommon arrangements. The galaxy is not above you, it's within you, and you are within it. A brief arrangement through which light becomes meaning. When you look up, the Milky Way is not a picture on a ceiling. It is the room itself, and you are furniture and fire and witness at once. If the numbers make you feel small, let smallness be a room where peace can live. The brief span of a life is long enough to plant questions and harvest answers, to turn wonder into method and back into wonder again. Science is only curiosity made careful, attention made communal. It is how countless tiny efforts, layered and shared, become a map wide enough to include galaxies and precise enough to explain a leaf. So take the measure that fits in your hands, the breath that lengthens when you listen, the star that clears the roofline at winter's edge, the thought that softens when it finds its place. You are not separate from the sky that holds you. The Milky Way turns, patient and bright. The sun carries us along its lane. Atoms trade partners and keep their promises. Light crosses the old dark and arrives, still warm with its first intent. In that soft traffic, let one idea settle and stay. You belong to this, not by conquest, not by scale, but by kinship. What moves through the galaxy moves through you. What steadies the stars steadies your pulse. You are a small clarity inside a vast, kind law. And tonight, with the room quiet and the sky where it has always been, that is enough.